Wow. Yeah, that
Humming.
that was so bad. Yeah, what?
This is the Nostaljunk Podcast, where one person's junk is another person's childhood. I'm Matt McGrath.
And I'm Kyle Smith. Join us as we take a deep dive into your pop culture consciousness.
Welcome back to the Nostaljunk Podcast. Thanks for joining us. Not sure why, but we're here again. Last week we talked about our top 5 movies. Pretty interesting. We had a varied list, that's for sure. Some of the choices went back to more child-oriented films, but then again, it depends on what spoke to you at an early enough age that still leaves an impression on you to this day, and that's what nostalgia is.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. We kind of have a history with music. We've been in kind of multiple bands together, played music in various projects over the years. So this week we're going to talk about our favorite albums, the albums that kind of maybe shaped us, the albums that we will always kind of go back to and remember fondly for various reasons. So Matt, do you remember the first true concert you ever went to?
I do, and it definitely deviates from the style of music that I have grown quite fond of. But my very first concert experience was at the Halifax Metro Center, not the Scotiabank Center. It was CCR, Creedence Clearwater Revisited, not Revival. This is minus John Fogerty, some other dude, but it didn't matter because when I was the age that I was, might have been about 7. I think it was just at that age that I remember the songs going into them. I knew the songs going into the concert, so not having John Fogerty actually didn't really matter to me. This guy's intensity was fantastic, so I was able to sing along. I knew all the songs because that's kind of what my mom and dad raised me on. If I play some CCR, I'll probably transport myself back to those really hard chairs that were not really comfortable. But we've all have been to a concert at some point that really meant something to us at an early age that we can look back on and say, that was awesome.
Wow, I don't even remember that they came here. That's so crazy. The concert that I remember the most, I'm going to talk about during this episode anyways a bit, and that's Metallica for the Black Album tour at the same venue, the Metro Center. Yeah. But for this purpose, for my question, I'm gonna go so far back. You don't even realize how far back I'm about to go. But I'm gonna go back to when I think I was probably 2 or 3. My first concert, and I remember this. I still have it burned into my brain. My first concert ever was Sharon, Lois, and Bram.
Oh yeah.
And now that's a piece of Canadian history right there. And if you want to, you've never seen a rowdy crowd, so you've seen an auditorium filled with screaming kids losing their minds to Skin and Marinky Dinky Dink. Come on, man. You know what's going on.
What a raucous crowd tonight. Thank you. Everyone back for nap time. No, that's cool. You know, like probably looking back, there was probably concerts like that before, but that was I can't be for certain, but I remember I went to a Zamfir concert at one point. You don't know? Okay. So Zamfir was kind of like a pan flautist. He had a Christmas tape that I listened to probably all year. And my grandmother always put it on because she knew I liked it. I'm sure we were all at some kid concerts back in our day. But yeah, CCR for me was my first true concert experience. Here we go. Let's run the tape.
So this first album for me, number 5, I mean, they were one of the biggest bands in the 90s, but this album to me, just in terms of redefining what you thought about a band, that's what this album, and I needed a live album anyways. Like, I wasn't. No, I know. This is a weird one. This is going to be a weird pick, but I like the fact that I have a live album on my list because of what it meant to me in the moment. And it's Nirvana's Unplugged in New York.
Cool.
That's my number 5.
Cool.
And I just love the whole story behind. I know that Kurt Cobain, like, he had a lot of issues, and even the story leading up to Unplugged is just kind of fascinating. How he was in his down period. He had a lot of problems with drugs. Not a lot of people really knew where he was at. Even like the lead up to the performance at MTV was, they didn't know where he was. There was no rehearsal. He showed up at the studio 2 hours before the show. Apparently, like, they didn't know how he was, and he just went on stage. And the performance is amazing. His voice is amazing. And it just, to me, Unplugged showcases how good stripped down, even heavy songs can be beautiful. His performance for Unplugged in New York just showcased how great of a vocalist he was, how great of a songwriter he was. Like, it's been documented that he was very heavily influenced by pop music like the Beatles. But even the fact that he chose to do half the album as covers kind of broke the mold of the MTV Unplugged format at the time. For a noisy garage rock band like Nirvana to do a stripped down, even Dave Grohl, who's one of the hardest hitting drummers ever, to play just ever so slightly, like, it's just such a great performance, and it just kind of really just redefined what I would think of in terms of alternative music, heavy music. So yeah, Nirvana, Unplugged in New York.
Probably a product of being in love with so much extreme metal early on that I had no room for Nirvana. Mm-hmm. I had no love for them. In recent years, yeah, I did get into Nirvana, and I do appreciate what Kurt did, and I do see the direct connection to the Beatles. Mm-hmm. You could call them rock, but it's ultimately just pop music at that point. Mm-hmm. Beatles, just such brilliant songwriters that they set the tone of what is song structure, a hit, a melody, hook. So when you say that about Kurt and about Nirvana, you can hear it. And actually, one of my early guitar teachers, he told me, play what you sing and sing what you play.
Wow.
And that's every Kurt Cobain solo. He plays his vocal line.
It's true. And it works.
He doesn't deviate from that. Yeah. And it further cements their importance too. Not only music history, but to even approaches to guitar. Yeah. You know, keep it simple. It's simple. Simplicity.
Keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the KISS method. But keeping it simple definitely works. So yeah, that I'm not surprised that that's in your top for sure.
But just, I mean, to me, that album is his voice. There's no extra effects on that. It's literally just 4 people with acoustic guitars and a drummer, and it really showcases how amazing Kurt Cobain's voice actually was. You know?
Right, and it's very raw. It's genuine,
and he does go off key at certain points, and but that's just human. You know, it's just, I don't know.
Which is also lost in the 90s, where perfection is the goal more so than originality.
Exactly.
And I think that's my big takeaway from Nirvana, is that it's not about how clean you can make your dirty record sound, because that's something that we're facing with.
What's wrong with just actually being dirty?
Yeah, what's wrong with just being human? Yeah. I mean, look at Neil Young.
One of the most uncommercial voices of all time, but one of the greatest voices of all time.
But has written some, even you could say the same thing about Bob Dylan. Mm-hmm. You know, one of the greatest poets and songwriters of all time, couldn't sing a fucking tune if he tried,
and probably wouldn't be as successful today.
No,
those people, they're lost to the time they were in. They couldn't succeed today.
I think Kurt follows a lot of the same appeal and the charming character that Neil Young falls into, which is it's not about singing perfectly. It's about telling the right story.
That's true.
It's about a message.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right. So that's my number
very
5.
cool.
Yeah. Nirvana Unplugged.
My number 5, Can't Live Without, Black Album.
Oh, you're like, I loved how earlier you go, what's wrong with the Black Album? And I'm like, nothing's wrong with the Black Album. That's because you love the Black Album.
That album is the White Album to the Beatles.
Damn.
Ayo. Really, there's not much that needs to be said about the Black Album that hasn't already been said before, but Bob Rock was as stubborn, if not more stubborn, than the band members themselves.
Yeah, he didn't let the band steamroll over whatever he kept them on track.
He kept them on track to a point that he changed them enough that loyalists hated Metallica because of it, but they also became the household name that brought you to their concert and influenced you to pick up a set of drumsticks.
It's very true.
And if they continued to write albums like Master of Puppets and Justice for All, which is not one of my favorite albums, despite it being a very good album. It's not one of my favorite albums.
What, Justice?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that Justice has its merits and its complexities, but it's also its pretentiousness that it's its downfall. Like 7-minute songs with 7 tracks of rhythms is enough. But in any case, yeah, Black Album, we know the hits. Even the misses on that album are better than their misses on their previous albums that are more revered as a proper metal album. But outside of a metal scope, I think that the Black Album is one of my favorite albums of that band. And I think it represents the band at their peak of success and composition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we talk a lot about like perfect storms and, making decisions, doing things at the exact moment you need to. And Metallica, at that point, were on such a trajectory of popularity, of commercial success. Like they had, Master, they had toured with Ozzy and gained a lot of fans. Justice, they got a Grammy nomination, which they lost, which they made fun of later. They just took everything in their arsenal, made it a little more accessible, a little more slowed down, created perfect metal pop songs. Like, not pop, but you know what I mean? Like, they're not thrashing out, they're not doing blast beats, but they're just creating memorable hooks and just, obviously the album that changed Metallica's path forever.
Popular metal at that point was redefined because metal in the 80s, in a popular sense, was Poison, Motley Crue, Cinderella. Mm-hmm. It's a blend of grooves and heaviness.
Man, Sabatru is probably one of the heaviest. I mean, at the time, definitely one of the heaviest. Did anybody go a whole step down before Sabatru?
Like on the radio?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, actually, John Fogerty tuned down a full step, and the rest of the band played in standard.
Didn't know that. Man, you're full of like trivia knowledge that I have no idea about.
Yeah.
But I love it.
This is useless knowledge. But in any case, yeah, Sabatru is one of my favorite songs of all time. Like it is so good.
Nice.
And I think that there's something to be said about, does heavy have to be fast?
No.
Like Brutal is about context. We were talking about movies in the last one. A brutal scene doesn't have to be gore.
Yeah, it's not flashy.
Yeah. You talked about Texas Chainsaw Massacre being one of your favorites. It's not nearly as horrific as some of the other top horror movies that end up making you feel like sick to your stomach.
Yeah, it's all about like what's actually happening.
Right. It's context. Anyway.
All right. So my number four. I'm looking at my list and I'm now noticing that I think I have a trend of albums that a band makes or an artist makes before they self-destruct.
Oh,
that's kind of dark.
Nice.
So Nirvana recorded Unplugged in New York in November of 1993, and Kurt died in April 94. 5 months later. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
It was like his swan song.
Right.
So this isn't as dark, but this album was hugely impactful to me as a kid getting into metal, thrash metal. But this was the last album that this artist would make before leaving the band. And it's Sepultura's Roots. This is my number 4.
Wow.
This album, I don't know, to me, and maybe it's because I'm a drummer, but Roots is such a groove-based album. There's a lot of, also it's a metal album that like used a lot of like it was like they made a conscious decision to go like Brazilian tribal influence or something, and they like totally, I don't know, the album is just such an experiment, but it works, you know, in terms of just groove-based songs.
Right.
You know, it's like riffs. The riffs are great. The riffs are pretty simple, but what matters most on Roots to me is the drums. Maybe that's what makes it so amazing. But Max Cavalera, one of the greatest metal vocalists of all time, you know, such a great opener. Roots, Bloody Roots, just huge. Rata Mahata using all those crazy tribal drums, such a great song.
Love that one.
Anyway, so yeah, that's my number 4.
That's really funny. Because when I was younger, I used to go to a rock camp. And that was held by now Logan McQuaid, but then Music Stop. And so for 2 weeks, you would go to some school that was rented out, form a band, master 2 songs, and then perform a concert at the end of 2 weeks.
Did you do a Sepultura song at rock camp?
Yeah, I did Rata Mahata.
Oh my God. That's amazing.
That same year, I also did Korn Blind. Coincidentally, also Ross Robinson produced.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Groove based, drum focused. Ross Robinson produced albums. A lot of drum focus.
That's true.
You know, a lot of almost like the drummer and the vocalist shares the same sonic wall.
And there's something to be said about the importance of drums in any kind of music. Like it's almost like there's a conscious effort to let's make people's heads bop. What makes people's heads move? And let's make a song around that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, which is also kind of lost within that scope of metal which I love being a metal head, and I love the metal culture, and I love wearing a metal shirt in public and someone saying, sick band, sick tee, and that instant connection to somebody that, you know, you could go out and have a beer with right after and have this same type of conversation.
That's very true.
And
music does truly bring people together.
Music does, but definitely the metal connection.
I find like metal and horror,
yes,
or a certain type of movie really does bring people, like, well, makes people really kind of, you know, feel a camaraderie.
Metal and horror share the same sphere in terms of appeal. You've got death, blood. You know, you've got bigger than life, unrealistic, murderous, disturbing imagery that somehow people love and scream for. So there's this understanding that it exists within the fantasy of whatever sort of story you're telling. It's a story that exists as an outsider. Mm-hmm. So you don't belong.
Yeah. It's not something you're supposed to enjoy.
Right.
But you do.
Yes, it's the style of music and genre of film that nobody likes, yet thousands of people love it worldwide.
Yep, for sure.
Anyway, yeah, Roots is very cool. They tuned down pretty low on that album.
Pretty low. It's pretty, and also what I love about Ross Robinson, at least at that point in his career, is very raw. You know, he did like almost like a Rick Rubin approach. You know, and Rick Rubin's, you know, known for his kind of rawness, I guess, but yeah, Roots just sounds, I don't know, so in your face, so raw. Even like the bass, if you really like pay attention to the bass in Roots, there's like a dirtiness, and it's like he's hitting it a little too hard, kind of like distorts at certain points. I don't know, it's something very primal. I mean, primal is the perfect word for Roots.
Sure.
I think that's what they were going for.
Yeah. Well, Ross was known for aggravating the artist to get a different performance out of them.
Yeah, Jonathan Davis and Daddy.
Right. He threw a can of beer at Rob Flynn and Machine Head, and picked up Corey Taylor, physically picked him up and thrashed him around the room during some chorus in the first Slipknot album.
So that's my number 4.
That's very cool. I love Sepultura.
Love it. But yeah, so it was weird. That's the theme of my list, is that, like, I don't know what happened, but yeah, so that was the last Sepultura album that Max Cavalera made with them before he went on to Soulfly.
I was very partial to Chaos, the album before.
Oh, Chaos AD, yeah. I mean, I think that's why Roots means so much to me, because I love Sepultura. I love Sepultura since I think Arise was my intro. And then I listened to Beneath the Remains and all that, and Schizophrenia, but then Chaos AD was also such a huge album, like Territory, and man, so many great songs. Well, Refuse Resist, obviously, but yeah. So Roots was, to me, like, just such a departure, I guess. You know, it
was,
and it was just all due to the fact of the introduction of all that percussion. You know, they really literally went back to their roots, and that's what makes it so special.
Wow, that's beautiful. That's lovely. Okay. Number 4. Are you ready? Did you already mention some groove-based albums?
That's what I'm all about.
All right. I'm going to hit you with Astro Creep 2000.
What?
Devil Man.
That's a good one. That's actually, in terms of, when I look back at, like, you know, what I was into at that certain point, like, Astro Creep was huge, man.
Yeah, Astro Creep 2000, baby. No, it was so good. I mean, obviously more human than human. You can't get simpler than one chord over and over again.
Has there ever been a top 10 hit that only used one chord?
I don't even think in non-metal music that has existed.
It's all E or all D, I guess. Drop D, maybe?
No, it's C sharp.
Oh, it's C sharp.
But that's my point, is that it's just one chord. But anyway, Astro Creep 2000.
Great.
It's a great album. It's a blend of what they were.
Did they have more than... I thought they only had one album before that.
Nope.
Oh.
They had some noise rock albums.
I did
before
not know
that.
this.
And not my favorite, but that's fine.
Like Pantera's power metal?
Don't say anything bad about Pantera. I have power metal on vinyl, and I have Projects in the Jungle.
Didn't even...
Heavy metal rules. In Donnie Darko at the party in the house, when he's wearing the infamous skeleton suit,
yeah,
they're playing Proud to Be Loud, performed by Pantera from power metal.
Wow.
White Zombie. Astro
Cool.
Creep 2000.
Yeah.
There's too many good songs on
There's
that.
a lot of great songs on that.
Okay, Creature of the Wheel.
Remember that chorus too goes, it's like...
Yeah.
Rob Zombie loves,
Yeah. As much as I love that album, it's kind of low on my list because there's not too much deviation from open E in C sharp on that album. But I love it. It's so good.
Great, a great concept, great album book. Like a booklet, like the album booklet with the lyrics and stuff. One of the best of all time.
So album art is right up there with going to rent film.
Yeah, for sure. And I loved coming home with a new album, open up that booklet and like just looking through it, looking through the lyrics, looking through the credits, the pictures. And Astro Creep 2000 has one of the best ones ever.
Pre-downloading and streaming, there's nothing better than coming home with a brand new album, looking at the artwork, and listening to that record until the next one comes out.
Yeah, it's true.
You were stuck.
People a lot of people probably these days do not understand the art of the album booklet.
But aside from that, but consumption.
Yeah.
You know, like we did not have the reliance of Spotify or iTunes Music.
Yeah, that's true.
You bought a record. That's what you listened to.
And you committed to that record. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
My number 3, this kind of plays into the fact that, I've been playing drums for a long time, and a lot of what makes a band interesting to me is the live element, like seeing a band live and watching them just like be who they are. So my number 3 is At the Drive-In's Relationship of Command. But I saw them on Letterman or something. I forget. I think it might have been Letterman. And to see a band explode as much as At the Drive-In did, like all of their parts were moving like at every different way at all different times. And it was such just a noise kind of explosion. And I bought the album, and I don't know, there was something about At the Drive-In, because I was always a fan of the punk and the metal kind of like aesthetic. And it's just such an original, I think maybe at the time it was just such an original piece of music. It was maybe not like the most accessible, but I think just because of their live act is what made me appreciate At the Drive-In. And even to this day, I don't know, I still go back to Relationship of Command. I just love it. And again, and this plays into the fact that this was an album that they made. So they made like 2 albums before it, and on the rise up, they slowly self-destructed, and Relationship with the Command was their last album before they broke up. I mean, they reunited in the last couple of years, probably for money reasons, but that album to me still remains one of the greatest, I don't know, alternative noise rock albums ever.
Sure.
Yeah. Do you know that album at all? Do you know At the Drive-In or not?
No. Not enough to comment on them. I know of them, and I've listened. It's not my thing.
Yeah.
But I can totally see its importance on post-hardcore.
Yes. As a music listener, you're always searching for something that makes you like a new feeling, something that makes you feel something different than what, like if you just listen to the same old music over and over again, the same old pop, same old metal, then you hear something that just like, kind of throws your brain for a loop. I don't know, something that really kind of propels you forward. I don't know. That's what At the Drive-In is to me. So, and that's the only At the Drive-In album I like, which is kind of interesting because like the other stuff just doesn't. I don't know. But great album.
Since I have already mentioned Rob Zombie in some capacity, Hellbilly Deluxe makes my next cut.
It's a great horror centric album.
So I don't know what did it for me, but it's still groove based. It's more towards a pop orientation, more simplistic, but it's the horror element, like you just said. I love the clips from horror film inserted throughout. It's very dancey. It's very boppy. We had already spoken about Roots being drum oriented, which allows it to be very groove oriented. I think it fits very, very perfectly within what is accessible metal without it being sold out.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of riffing off of industrial metal, alternative metal that was very, very popular, was no longer White Zombie and now Rob Zombie. Outside of the singles, my favorite 2 songs on it that I still, if I put them on right now, I will not listen to anything you say. I will get lost right into the Demonoid Phenomenon and Meet the Creeper.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess I don't know that album as much. Like I know Dragula and Living Dead Girl.
Sure. Good songs. Super Beast is great. That's a great opener to an album. But Demonoid Phenomenon and Meet the Creeper are very fun. I think that's my takeaway, is this album has more fun than it does like a serious approach to, trying to remain metal.
Yeah.
Or, what is true to whatever format you're writing. There's various tunings right across the album. He dabbles in, some of the verses have kind of like a rave-oriented beat. And then the choruses have the catchy hook. And then you get your typical White Zombie Pantera-esque groove metal hooks throughout, like the bridges and the main riffing. And I don't know, it's a product, again, of its time. It came out of whatever he was doing previously, whatever he couldn't do previously and wish he could have been doing. Who's to say? But I think that Hellbilly Deluxe still stands high on my list.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, my number 2. I mean, this is one of those albums that gets talked about a lot. We already talked about Metallica a lot, and Matt had the Black Album, but so I'm just going to go and keep going on that topic. And, you know, what's the greatest album by one of the greatest bands of all time? It's Master of Puppets. I'm just going to say it.
I thought you were going to say Saint Anger.
No. But yeah, Master of Puppets to me is, I mean, one of the greatest albums by one of the greatest bands ever. It's kind of perfect in that it's only 8 songs. Every song is amazing. Well, except maybe Leper Messiah, which I don't know. It has a great middle section, but might not be the best song. But every other song on that album is incredible. Battery is pretty much my favorite Metallica song of all time. And, you know, as I got into Metallica with the Black Album, as many people did, but then you do the deep dive and come to realize that, you know, this album truly is one of the best albums ever made. It still stands up today. Great songs, the greatest instrumental song of all time, Orion. It's just just a band at the height of their powers doing what they do best, you know, and kind of plays into what I was talking about before, a band or an album right before a certain part of that band expires. And unfortunately, you know, that is the album that was the last for their original bassist, Cliff Burton, who, you know, contributed to many of the songs on the album, Orion being probably the most substantial. But yeah, Master of Puppets, great album, great band.
Master of Puppets is a great album. I tried out for my first band by playing the solo to Master of Puppets and got it within the first, I don't know, 2 repeats of that.
Nice.
That's all I had to play. And they were like, yeah, you get it. Anyway. Yeah, no, Master Puppets, the album, fantastic. It's great.
What's your number 2?
My number 2 takes me back to elementary, pre-junior high, when Green Day came to Halifax.
Hey!
And this is when Green Day was still Green Day.
I slept out for the tickets to that.
Insomniac is my number 2 album.
Really? That's
More
amazing.
than Dookie.
That's good.
Insomniac has something else going on with it that Dookie doesn't. And I think it's actually,
man, that's the
heaviness of it.
Not even the heavy. I don't know. Yeah, but I think for me, the feeling of Insomniac, for what I remember of that's an awesome pick.
Yeah, the way that Trey played all the grooves. The pace of the album is a little more aggressive. Bass, the production, like just everything. Everything was just right on point. I love Dookie. Dookie's great. But Insomniac.
There's no return from 86.
That's my song. That's my song. But all of those songs I do not skip. But like Tightwad Hill, like even the non-hits, they're great. Yeah. They're firing on all cylinders, just like Dookie. But there's something about the production of it that's very heavy sounding. It's very aggressive, and while still remaining very apathetic. I love Insomniac. I can put it on anytime and instantly smile with that same feeling of like, oh, I'm an angsty teenager, and Insomniac's my album. I love it. It's awesome. Great. So what do you have for Insomniac memories?
Just the concert. I forget what year it must have been. But yeah, I went to the Metro Center to see Green Day. And it was just, I don't know. That was just I remember they played Stuck With Me. Remember that song? But they had to stop. Were you at that concert?
No, I didn't.
They had to stop
the
show because someone threw a sparkle stick or something, like one of those like
fire thing. Anyway, they threw it and they were playing Stuck With Me and they had to stop Stuck With Me. And they was like, get that fucking guy out of here. It was amazing. It was awesome. But yeah, I was on the floor for that show, you know, because they had Dookie out. Green Day was just like the biggest band. And the fact that they were coming to Halifax was just like amazing.
On the B-sides of the Green Day library, the song Doo Da Da is actually Stuck With Me because the chorus in that is Stuck With Me.
Man, I haven't listened to that in so long.
So apparently what happened was it was retitled incorrectly during the mixdown process. And this unknown song showed up as Stuck With Me on the album. They went with it. They even did like a video for it. And it's not actually Stuck With Me. The song Doo Da Da is actually Stuck With Me with the chorus Stuck With Me.
That's amazing. I need to listen to that again. Yeah, I didn't know that.
So that was number 2. What's your honorable mentions? You got anything off the top of your head?
No Effects are one of my favorite bands of all time. So
cool.
Something like Punk and Drublick or So Long and Thanks for All the Shoes.
Oh, cool.
Those are 2 of my favorite No Effects albums. Man, they perfected pop punk.
Yes.
In terms of keeping punk still fast. I mean, a lot of the songs do sound the same, but in terms of melody, what they could do with melody in terms, all the drum beats kind of are super fast and this kind of the same. But man, No Effects perfected that form of pop punk to me. And Punk and Drublick was the album that got me into No Effects.
My real honorable mention is 1039 Smooth Out Slappy Hours by Green Day.
Damn, you're all about the Green Day.
Early Green Day. I don't know what it is, but this is not Kerplunk and it's not Dookie. As a young guitarist, like I tried to, and pre-internet, you had to rely on music stores to get sheet music. So I bought whatever I could. They had this as a tab book and I bought it. I did it backwards. So like I learned the chords, I learned the riffs, got the record, perfected it that way. I don't know. There's something about it. If you go back and take a look at it, you're going to hear a very raw pop punk band without the production, without the perfection. And even though Kerplunk is cool and Dookie is Dookie,
And Dookie is Dookie.
I think it's a very underrated, underappreciated, not only pop punk album, but Green Day album.
Definitely, yeah.
Go back.
I don't know that album at all. Like, I mean, I know of it. I think I definitely know Kerplunk more, but I never listened to that album. All right, so my number 1. Wow. So this album to me has always been my number 1 ever since I heard it. And this is like so I think it was out in the mid 90s. And again, it's my theme of my list, apparently, of bands that make their masterpiece before they self-destruct. And in terms of a live act, in terms of just explosive music, a mix of punk, hardcore, just noise kind of metal. I don't know. Maybe that's just what I'm into. Anyways, my number 1 is Refused, The Shape of Punk to Come. This album, I don't know. Just to me, it's like a mission statement of DIY music. This album to me, every song is just like, you know, there's experimentation with the interludes and kind of like the radio noise and the transitions in between songs into like, there's kind of punky pop punk riffs into just explosive screamo into like a huge like wall of noise kind of metal, I guess. But to see them live, of course, I never saw them live in person, but to watch them on YouTube or on TV, like just go YouTube like an old Refused concert and just, I dare you to not be just enthralled by the energy that these guys put out. Like, there's also a great documentary called Refused or Fucking Dead, which is the title of a song on The Shape of Punk to Come. And it's just a great chronicle of a band coming apart at the seams, a band that where like the weight of like their popularity and everything kind of like coming to a head, and just what it means like to be, I guess, like a band in that position. It's great footage. Great. There's a great story of their last show ever, which just happened to be this like shitty basement show in the States somewhere. And I don't know, just a great album by a great band that ended way too soon. Just will always be my number one. Refused, The Shape of Punk to Come.
Yeah. I remember watching Much Loud. And
New Noise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last cry.
yeah.
Yeah.
I know. Well, both Refused and At the Drive-In, they have done reunion tours or whatever, but man, just like those two albums, just like at the height of their power before they kind of quit, like their initial quit. I don't know. Just something about like a band. I think I like the story of a band that has nothing to lose, or just, I don't know, just
nothing to prove, nothing to gain.
Or they're trying to prove everything and they just throw everything they can. I don't know. There's something about that really, I just love. It just really interests me.
Well, like the title says, The Taste of Punk to Come. Punk doesn't have to be a genre. Punk is an attitude.
It's true.
And punk exists within whatever norms exist. So influence of just noise, like you said, there's screamo elements.
Yeah.
I'd say there's even some EDM in that, with
that's
using
true, yeah.
synthetic drums.
They do, yeah. You're right.
It's got such an approach that says fuck you to whatever your norm is,
we'll do what
even
we want.
When your norm is not to be the norm.
Mm-hmm.
So punk is not supposed to be the norm. At some point, your unnormal becomes normal.
Yeah, that's true.
It's very normalized. So, you think about at some point, pop punk to maybe an early Green Day or an early NoFX, maybe even an early Blink-182, might have been, very cutting edge and new at the time. But at some point, that becomes the new standard. I think that album says punk needs to be revitalized as a norm.
That's amazing. I'm glad you see that way. Now, when you say it that way, it's like, is The Shape of Punk to Come like the 2001 of punk albums?
Sure.
It could be.
I think it is, but punk as a genre kind of died. And then they revitalized it by reinventing it.
Punk is, as an attitude, not so much as a style of music.
Even still, on a prog sense, you can take the aesthetic of Refused from that album and put it into Dillinger Escape Plan, and you hear it.
Yeah, you're right, man. Wow, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so there's a lot to be taken away from that album that exists outside of punk. It became just heavy music. It became aggression. It became, like I said, the fuck you to whatever you expect it to be. And I think that's a very overlooked, underappreciated, but beloved album by those that get it.
Nice. That's amazing.
And that's not my number one. My number one becomes a filthy little secret that gets crumpled up and hidden in the bottom drawer next to my Discman that I listen to when my parents don't know that I'm listening to it. And it is Marilyn Manson's Antichrist Superstar. Oh. Still to this day, that is my number one record of all time.
Awesome.
It takes me back to...
That does take me back too.
It takes me way back to hanging out with my friend Jason, who introduced me to Manson, introduced me to Korn. This is Manson at the height of his, you're not supposed to listen to this kind of music. You want to talk about album art when your own parents hype it up as being literally its title, The Antichrist, and they know you're listening to it, but yet you don't want them to know you're listening to it. Track for track, Irresponsible Hate Anthem, beautiful people.
Man, Angel with the Scab Wings.
Heart drug face wanna powder his nose. The context of when it came out was when I was a fan of it, and I was the target audience of an audience that shouldn't have been listening to it. Yeah. That was how it was marketed. That's how it was pitched. He was featured on TV as the artist your kids shouldn't be listening to.
True. Like, image that he attached himself to, like, was just a perfect part of what made Marilyn Manson successful. Like, the look of the Beautiful People video. You know what I mean? Just amazing. Yes. Even movies, like, remember The House on Haunted Hill? Like, the skitsy kind of...
Right.
The creatures moved, like, that was all the Beautiful People.
Like, it's skipping frames. Yeah. The household name of what you shouldn't be listening to. That was our Kiss. That was our Alice Cooper. That was our David Bowie. That was our Beatles for our parents.
Every generation needs that.
That was
we do.
That was Elvis the Pelvis.
Yeah. When disobedience rules.
Right.
Like, we're not supposed to be watching and listening to this, but we're going to watch and listen.
Sure.
It's when the R rating is for everybody.
Right. I can put that on now. I won't stop it. I will listen to it forever.
Nice.
All right. Yeah. Wow. What a crazy varied list that was. It's just amazing always just looking back and thinking about those albums that mean the most to you. And that, just a reminder, this is not our opinion of the greatest albums ever made, like a Rolling Stone list or a Spin magazine list, but it's just kind of the albums that, when we think about it, mean the most to us growing up. We'll just go back to and remember fondly. So thanks for listening. Join us next week where we're going to start talking about our favorite TV shows, the shows that kind of made us, so to speak. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Nostaljunk Pod. Reach out to us. Tell us about your favorite concert experience or your most cherished albums, and we'll give you a shout out on the show. For Nostaljunk Podcast, I'm Kyle Smith saying, I'd rather be forgotten than remembered for giving in.
And I'm Matt McGrath. I wasn't born with enough middle fingers.